Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Renee Daniels, Senior Director of Multimedia and Event Sponsorship Sales at Black Enterprise. This has been an incredible and enlightening day. Our inaugural Women of Power Tech Virtual Summit is such an important conference to our team at Black Enterprise, who have worked tirelessly to make it happen, and you, our audience of over 4,000 attendees. But I must say that this achievement is not done in a vacuum or without a lot of support. Our partners supported the launch of this conference, a brand new and our first virtual summit. None of this would be possible without their support. The sponsors of this event are equally responsible for the success of this event and the Women of Power franchise. With that, I would like to take a few moments to thank our sponsors that truly made this summit come together in the way it has. Beginning with our title sponsor, Ally. Ally kicked things off with Conversations That Count, Fame, Fortune, and Work, a masterclass with Bozoma Badass Boss St. John, Netflix's new CMO. Our presenting sponsors, JP Morgan Chase, hosted yesterday's main stage conversation, Wealth Building Strategies for Black Women. Verizon hosted C-Suite Confidential, top tech execs who defied the odds and how you can too, with Rose Stuckey-Kirk, Chief Corporate Social Responsibility Officer at Verizon, and Shelley Archambault, Board Director for Verizon, retired CEO of MetricStream, and author of Unapologetically Ambitious, Take Risks, Break Barriers, and Create Success on Your Own Terms. To our platinum sponsors, American Airlines and Apple. Apple hosted Conversations That Count, where tech meets justice, a masterclass with Lisa Jackson, Vice President, Environment Policy and Social Initiatives for Apple, and Caroline Clark, our Chief Brand Officer of the Women of Power franchise. To our corporate sponsors, Dell Technologies, DTCC, Salesforce, and Walmart. Please join me in thanking the 2020 Black Enterprise Women of Power Tech Summit sponsors. Again, it was truly a pleasure working with you all, and I look forward to planning the 2021 Women of Power Tech Summit. Now, it is my pleasure to introduce our next main stage session, Standing in the Gap Without Falling Apart, Bro Culture versus Black Lives Matter, hosted by our title sponsor, Ally. Our speakers are Lule, Demmissie, President of Ally Invest, Mary Spio, Founder and CEO of CEEK VR, and Sherrell Dorsey, Founder and Publisher of The Plug.
Ally believes in helping people achieve their financial dreams by supporting efforts that improve economic mobility for individuals, families, and communities. We accomplish this through our relationships with select organizations, event sponsorships, and volunteerism to support grassroots community efforts. We also recognize that a key component to success is education. That's why we offer many tools, resources, and support. To learn more, visit ally.com/social impact.
Welcome, my name is Sherrell Dorsey. I'm the founder of The Plug, and I have the privilege today to host this conversation on standing in the gap without falling apart, bro culture versus Black Lives Matter. Today our guests are Lule, Demmissie, and Mary Spio. Lule is the president of Ally Invest, and Mary is the founder and CEO of CEEK VR. So I want to go ahead and give both Mary and Lule an opportunity to share just a bit about who they are and what they've been up to. And then we're going to dive into this very important discussion on Black women in tech and sort of how we start to navigate this space, considering where we are in this moment in time around the Black Lives Matter movement and what's looking ahead for us in the tech space. So Mary, can you just speak a bit about your background as an entrepreneur and what you're building?
Definitely. Hi everyone. Exciting to be having this discussion here with Black Enterprise. So I'm Mary Spio. I'm the CEO and founder of CEEK, and CEEK is a streaming service for virtual events and experiences. So think of us as a ticket master for the virtual world. So we have a platform that features the biggest names in music, everyone from Lady Gaga to Nas to Dwayne Wade, and the list goes on. We stream virtual events. And what's unique about what we're doing is that we're not only streaming online, but we also stream to virtual reality headsets. So we are a VR streaming platform.
That's awesome. And Lule, I'd love for you to jump in here and tell us more about what you do at Ally.
Thank you for having me, first of all. It's very nice to join you both. I am coming to tech actually by way of financial services. So Ally is centrally a bank, a digital bank that also has other financial services associated with it, one of which is mortgage and the other one is investing. I'm the president of Ally Invest, which is the investing arm of Ally. By virtue of being a digital only provider, we are a fintech. And we provide both trading services as well as investing and advisory services through a digital means for consumers who don't really need a storefront anymore to go and do their financial services. And in this environment that we're in, that has become even more apparent. And so it's been an environment that has really sort of welcomed the digital model that we have. My background is really, I'm financial in my background, but by virtue of being in fintech for over now 15 years, it's really sort of brought in the technology slant for me. And so it's been really exciting combining my business school and my financial background with the revolution that technology has had, effect that it's had on financial services and what that means in terms of democratizing investing in general. So it's been an exciting time to be a part of.
That's exciting. You both have such unique experiences. I think Mary as an entrepreneur, Lule on the corporate end, but particularly in a space that continues to grow exponentially. And we know that as Black women in either space, from entrepreneurship to corporate America, our experiences are often very unique. And so at a time right now where it seems as though Black people in tech are really getting the moment in the spotlight, where we're talking about disparity, where we're talking about some of the challenges that we face, Black women in particular have our own sort of unique experiences and coming together to create accountability within either the entrepreneurial environment or within the corporate environment, and building momentum as kind of the social media parade moves on and starts to go on to the next topic. We're still kind of stuck here with figuring out, how do we navigate? How do we navigate this bro culture? How do we continue to press forward for ourselves, be advocates for ourselves, really have this sense of intersectionality, and really continue to make strides? I would love, maybe we start back here with you, Lule, because fintech it seems like such a masculine world. It's traditionally sort of been very white male dominated. And obviously as a Black woman in this space, you're presenting a very different kind of viewpoint in terms of who gets to be at the table at these discussions and leading the future of payments forward. So I'd love to just get your take on, how we should start to be thinking about how we're navigating these spaces in these very future forward, tech companies for the most part.
Yeah. I mean, when I started out, it was unimaginable for me to think of myself in this role or people who looked like me in the role that I have. Not because I was not ambitious, not because my parents didn't raise me to think that the sky was the limit, but because I just didn't see it. I didn't see the blueprint. And it wasn't something that actually demotivated me. It was something that actually motivated me. And what I have found in the 20, 30 plus years now that I've been in financial services and in fintech, about half that time, is that indeed those obstacles are real, both in terms of the subtle experiences that you feel, as well as just the things that are unspoken. The fact that when you don't see people that look like you in the room, it does change the decision-making dynamic or how you voice an opinion. But I will tell you this, what's interesting is my career started taking off when I realized that the very nature of my intersectional identity was my superpower. What I mean by that is this. I bring a different lens to the room every time I come into the room. And that lens shapes, at the end of the day, financial services are consumed by a very growing, diverse consumer base. And so the lens I bring in is one that is empathetic to, people who might have same-sex families, or people who might have single-parent household, or a grandparent raising them, or whatever the diversity of what family is and people are now is. And when I did that, really what happened was I turned what would have been classically considered things that kept me on the outside as the mechanism to channel my ambition. And it has been really enlightening. And it's something that I continue to do for folks who are afraid of coming into fintech. One of the reasons I use the mantle the way I do is because I want to show them, you too can thrive here. You too can make it here. It helps when you see people like you make it. But I have found it to be something that we should lean into and voraciously go after. But the challenges still remain, for sure. It's hard when you don't see yourself in a room.
I really appreciate the transparency, Lule. I think it's important for us to name those things and to also see individuals like yourself who don't let that hold you back from having a thriving career and helping to break barriers and have some of those tough and hard conversations sometimes to help continue to push mobility forward, particularly for underrepresented folks in spaces such as fintech. Mary, I want to jump back over here to you because you are not just a founder in virtual reality, which continues to have widespread implications across the way we're thinking about technology and society, from entertainment to healthcare. I mean, there's so many different uses that seem to be proliferating as we continue to have smarter technologies. And for you as a Black woman in this space, I can imagine the nuances and some of the challenge you may have faced, navigating not just this space, but then potentially and also in areas of raising money, of maybe being taken seriously. I'd love for you to talk a bit about what your experience has been thus far, and as a founder, how you are really positioning yourself, not just as an expert and not just as a Black woman, but a leader in this space to continue to set a standard for what a Black founder looks like.
Absolutely. So as Lule, mentioned, especially being in the tech world, a lot of times you find yourself being the only one that looks, the way you do. But it's also such a phenomenal opportunity to really address a lot of problems that are not being addressed. A quote that I think summarizes a lot of the successes that we've been able to have as a company is from Arthur Schopenhauer, and it says that talent hits a mark that no one else hits, but genius sees a mark that no one else sees. And innovation is about insight, having that unique insight into something. And for example, being in virtual reality, I remember being at a conference once. It was all people that looked nothing like, you or I. And asking questions about the fact that, I was having these headaches every time I tried on a VR headset. And then also I noticed that for a lot of the, presentations that we were doing, a lot of women will also complain about having, a headache. And so I started to look into why this was happening. And I found that, a lot of the headsets that were available had never been tried on women, so it's not that they didn't want women to buy it, because everybody wants, the whole world to buy the product. But by having that gap, they had left out 50% of the market. And so that allowed me, for example, to come up with a patent awarded VR headset that, actually I have it here, patent awarded VR headsets that uniquely addresses that particular need. So the challenges have also been opportunities, but the challenges still remain. The fact that just even as of a couple of years ago, only 2% of financing went to women. And when it comes to Black women, it's even worse, which has meant that I've had to do things quite differently. We've bootstrapped, we found a different type of investors, and We've, done a lot of partnerships, offered a lot of partnerships, opportunities where we are offering our technology, to different companies. So those are some of the ways that, I've been able to kind of circumvent that. And, it's been great, but the challenge still remains.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. What I found very similar in both of your stories is talking about being very quite often the only person in the room that looks like you. And I can only imagine some of the loneliness that you've felt. And I know that for many Black women, even, viewing this conversation, a lot of times we do feel quite alone. And, there's kind of this theory around being self-made. And we all know that there are folks that have contributed to our successes, and be that family or friends, or even people in the workplace who went the extra mile on our behalf. And so I'd love for you both to talk about, and Lule, I'll go ahead and start with you first, to really talk about maybe the art or skill set, of recruiting and cultivating strategic allies for yourself, both personally and professionally, as you have gotten through some of the barriers, gotten through some of those very uncomfortable moments of having to have hard conversations as women, as Black women. Maybe you can speak a bit to that, Lule.
Yeah. It was different as I was starting out in my career, but I think it got more expanded as I matured in my career. And I think at the beginning, part of it is like, you don't have the same network that teaches you, like, you're usually the first, right? In your family, you're the first in some way or another. And so there isn't that uncle or that aunt or somebody that's telling you, like, this is how it's done. And this, the nuance, right? Not the actual skills or the programmatical way of approaching a network and finding mentors, but like the nuance around it. And that is actually what I think hurts us more than anything else, is that we don't have that, like, that footsteps that were there before, right, to help us, nurture us. And so for me, it's been, but at the same time, having to build it myself and know how to network and nurture those relationships has also been really valuable in making me really resilient, right? Nothing's ever been spoon-fed to me, but it is also by the grace of so many people that I'm here where I am. So just knowing that sort of combo of, like, it's resiliency, it's putting yourself into it, but also being gracious enough to understand that others helped you out, I think it keeps you grounded and purpose-driven in the way you do your networking. So the way I tell people all the time is, I am incredibly radicalized when it comes to recruiting. I'm not that subtle about it. If the recruiting menu of talent that we're looking at, if the sort of roster of talent we're looking at is not diverse, we will suffer in the front of innovation. We will suffer as a culture. We will just be left behind as an industry when it comes to fintech if we do not make sure that the pipeline is diverse in the beginning. And then I also get the usual sort of, well, the pipeline, we want it to be diverse, but nobody's knocking on our door. And where I challenge people to think about is, like, how is it possible for us to challenge ourselves to have a richer and more diverse pipeline of talent and mentors if we're not nursing that before we're ready to hire? How diverse is your LinkedIn profile? How diverse is the friendship circles you have and the people you know? Because at the end of the day, we know that when it comes to hiring, it is the circle around you that influences. It's the environment around you. And so the challenge I give people is that before you even think about hiring, you have to think about how to re-architect your network, right? And if you did that, you would give people the ability to have the leg up that most people who don't have, that, as I said, that uncle or aunt, the availability to be able to have that leg up. Because one thing I do know for sure, I have never built a team that is wholly one thing that is stronger than a diverse team that I've built. Never. A diverse team has always been stronger, both in terms of the innovation front, both in terms of, as well as, like, the blind spots that we all catch with each other, the perspectives, the richness of the journey, all of the above. There has never been a point where I have built a diverse team and I thought, ooh, that was worse than the one that was not diverse. And so I think if we can help people understand that diversity, by definition, is good for business, it's good for innovation, and it's good for our own personal sort of satisfaction as human beings, and help them diversify their pipeline and their network, At least that's how I look at it as an individual. There are lots of institutional things we can do, but as an individual, that's how I try to influence recruiting and other things.
That's absolutely phenomenal, Lule. I think being able to look holistically at team building and understanding, even for ourselves, as we're even thinking about our own, as you said, architecting your network, and how much that is also important for us. Even as Black women, I feel very comfortable with other Black women, but also knowing that there is tremendous value in having a diverse network from people who are coming from different perspectives, who can also pour into my experience, make connections that I typically would not have access to, and help to expand my journey and understanding of either a professional space, technology, new, present, what have you. Mary, I want to go ahead and toss this back over to you, particularly how you build strategic allies in terms of the entrepreneurship side of it, and sort of maybe some of that team building as well that Lule has mentioned, because you are responsible for direct hiring and growing out and building your business. So maybe you can speak to us a bit more about how you think about that, architecting a network.
Absolutely. And if there's one advice that I would give to any entrepreneur, network. You know, when I look at how we've been able to build what we've done, it's all been about networks. You know, a lot of the people that I've reached out to, people I've met through conferences, but there is no aspect of, you know, our business that has not been touched by, you know, networking. We've been, for example, we received an investment from Facebook as a result of someone that I networked with, which then gave me the opportunity to be able to present, you know, our technology to them. Again, with Black Investment Tech Fund, they also, you know, invested in our company. It was also through someone that I knew through college who read, you know, so it's all about the network, especially when we're looking at ways in which we're going to circumvent and be able to build in spite of what the statistics say, in spite of, you know, what's in the way. You have to network. And so that's something that's been, you know, a part of just, you know, just what I do. And then I also give back and mentor so that I can also be that bridge for other people that are coming up, that are trying to, you know, reach out to different companies. But especially in today's day and age where we have LinkedIn and Facebook and all these different social networks, when you decide the type of company that you want to build, look at someone out there that's already done, you know, something similar to what you want to do. Reach out to them. I reach out to people all the time through LinkedIn, and it is truly incredible, some of the people that, you know, end up coming back, and the partnerships or the relationships that you might end up, you know, through that. So network.
Yeah. I could not agree with that more. I mean, I can't, the amount of the democratization of networking and access that these platforms give us now, you know, you'd be surprised how many people are open to advising you or talking to you. I know I am. I think at least once a day, somebody's contacting me on LinkedIn. And I would say that, you know, from my perspective, it's sort of like, at the beginning, I used to be like, well, they don't look like me. They're not going to find anything. We don't have nothing in common. We would just stare at each other. And what I realized is that it takes practice to do this. And so you got to fail a few times and feel foolish and, you know, not know how to do it. But eventually it becomes such a skill that you're comfortable in the way that networking doesn't feel inauthentic. Because a lot of people feel like networking feels like it's some kind of transactionary, like inauthentic thing. And the thing is, once you start practicing at it, all it is amplifying who you are. Right? And making sure other people see who you are, because somewhere out there, somebody will want to hire you or fund you or something else.
These are great tactical advice and ideas. I think even just down to building your network on social media. I mean, people are so accessible as you both mentioned, and just referring back to some of the things you both shared about, sometimes being the only person to try this out. So not really having a frame of reference around how you're building or how you're getting where you're going to. And so being able to lean in on that network who has some of that critical information to help guide you as you're pushing and following your path. I want to talk just a bit about, and looking at you two in very different spaces, but what you all represent is very significant. And I'm sure that for folks watching today, being able to see two Black women at the top of their work and the top of an industry, it has to be motivating in so many different ways. And I think about what we miss when there's an absence of Black women in these spaces, particularly in these high tech areas, these very high growth, going nowhere, here to stay environments. And I'd love for you to speak to what we miss and what our community misses, particularly if we are not in the room, particularly in these very high tech spaces. And Mary, maybe we can start with you.
Sure. Today there are so many issues in the community, right? A lot of times people will ask, well, how do I know what business to start, or what can I do, or how can I get into tech? I don't have a, programming background. I'm not good at math. I'm not this, I'm not that. But the truth is, you look at technology, even, I'm a rocket scientist, and I say even rocket science is not rocket science. It's not that difficult when you look at it as a tool for accomplishing what you want to do. So whatever it is that upsets you, you can look at that and say, well, how can I use technology to use this to build a solution that's going to solve a problem for many other people in my community or the world at large? When I look at what we're doing at CEEK, for example, we've created a platform that allows streams to be recorded on the blockchain, which offers transparency to content creators. This is something that, as a content creator, I was complaining about. There were so many people complaining about. Artists are not happy with, information being provided to them by platforms, and everyone was complaining about it. And so I had a unique insight into the fact that this is a problem that is affecting the whole industry, particularly people that are putting out music of urban genre. This is an insight that a lot of people would not know. And I knew this because I work with a lot of urban artists who, have indicated that with the algorithms, the way they're set up, they are paid less than other people, even with the same amount of views. So now by creating this solution and understanding that the algorithms and the way they justify it is saying, well, it's not brand safe, it's not this, it's not that, And so by offering the solution to the people that it affects, because they're close to me, now I realize that it's not just a problem for them, but for the entire world. On our platform today, we have everyone, all genres, Bon Jovi, Lady Gaga, Katy Perry, the biggest names out there in the world, because I decided to solve a problem that was affecting myself and the people around me. So by not being in the room, we're really missing the opportunity, especially now, to solve some really big problems. And no matter what your background is, just look at tech as a tool. When you look at a lot of the founders that are out there, not everyone has a technical background. Elon Musk has an economics background, and you go through the list, but they all have something in common, which is the passion to innovate. And innovation is about problem solving. So find some really good problems to solve.
I love that, Mary. That is definitely that rallying cry of like, let's get to work. Lule, I'd love for you to respond as well in terms of what would an absence of a Lule in a fintech space really look like? What would the opportunity gap look like if we did not have folks such as yourself thinking about, underrepresented communities, thinking about who's not necessarily at the table? Would love to get your perspective as well.
Yeah. I think that most people are good people, but I do not think that we will have a diversity of talent across the board unless there are more diverse people making decisions in the room as well. I don't think it's an indictment of people's goodness. It is just a truth of human nature. So for me, having people be in the room is of the utmost importance if we're going to fix some of the systemic issues we talk about all the time, right? If you think about it, if you think about some of the most dominant places where people of color have presence, right? Culture is a good one, right? What happens when that happens? The culture can shape the narrative. It can shape outlook on views of policy. It can do all sorts of things. Well, that's no less true being in technology or being in finance. At the end of the day, money is the bloodstream of what makes a community, as strong as anything else, right? Culture is one of them, love, faith, anything else. But money is essential, right? And not in the sense of money being put on your lap, but the intelligence around money. Right. The knowing of how to invest and knowing that investing is one arm of how wealth is created, right? Knowing how to bank, understanding the economics of your own personal sphere. And then to me, that's one of the reasons I love fintech, is it combines two arenas that I think we need more representation in, because when we are in the room, we can influence product development. Like, for instance, whether it's democratizing products, like we have a robo that's free now that has a minimum of less than $100 as an example, right? Or whether it's the hiring practices, so there's more diversity. And Ally has a tremendous program around this. One of the reasons I'm here is because of Ally. And one of the way you can diversify the pipeline and creating more people of color who have the means to be in this space, right? And I could not agree with Mary more, in the sense that you don't have to be an engineer. I'm an economics background and MBA. In fact, you don't even need to have a master's degree to enter this. You can be a scrum master and make your way up in a technology company. Like, there is no hurdle that people should think is preventative. There really isn't. It is a matter of going into it, connecting with people, learning more, and us, people like me and her and Mary, reaching out to make sure that people understand you too can do this. It is not an impossible thing. But I think the more people that are in the room influencing that narrative, the more the probability of that tent getting wider.
Absolutely. I just was nodding my head. I believe Mary was too, to just everything said. I almost wanted to say amen at the end of every sentence. No, I am so grateful for you both taking the time today to just connect with us, share more about your story, your journey, and also give these very tactical advice and tips on navigating so many components of our careers, and also removing that intimidation factor of what it means and what it looks like to work in the tech space. As part of our closing, before we close out, I'd love for you to share just very briefly, maybe one thing that you're doing for yourselves. Of course, we are amid a pandemic. It is one of the craziest kind of work environments that we have, with us all being remote. The culture and nature of business and life has changed drastically. But what are you doing individually to manage the stress, and just some of the challenges in general in the work that you do? Mary, let's start with you.
Sure. So one of the things that I'm doing is I make sure that I make time every single day, because I have a soon to be 10-year-old. So I make sure that I make time for him. And so during that time, that whether I'm playing with him or just chit-chatting or learning about, what he's doing, video games, all that. So I take that time out to decompress for the day. So that's one thing that I'm doing. That, really helps things not get too overwhelming and normalize things a bit more.
That's awesome. Kids always remind us how to play again, that life is not as serious as we make it. So that's awesome. Lule, what about yourself?
Yeah, my kids keep me real as well, which is wonderful. I have a 10-year-old and a 7-year-old. We just came back from vacation, which is wonderful. What I do for myself, I do a few things, but one of the most important things that I tapped into about 5+ years ago was meditation. And I used to think, oh my God, I have no time for this stuff. But really, I downloaded an app, Headspace, and it takes me like 5-10 minutes a day. And the level of centeredness it gives me is really so important, because, my job has tremendous levels of challenges, and being able to be that centered and calm as I approach those things really helps me, and it helps my team. And it's something that really I cling to every morning, essentially.
That's a lovely tip. I think we all are now learning more about these apps for calm and centeredness. And we're just very grateful again for both of you, for your work, for all that you're accomplishing, and just your inspiration overall. So thank you so much for joining us here for this conversation.
Thank you so much. And I'll be linking in with you, all of you, just so you know.
For sure.
Reach out. You know, we're on LinkedIn, Instagram, everywhere. So reach out.
Awesome.
Thank you.